Hello, my name's Tess Hills and I'm a street theatre performer. I first got involved in street theatre back in 2001 when I freelanced for a company that put on big outdoor arts events. Whilst working for them, I met street theatre companies from all over the UK and abroad. I got to see all their performances and it was brilliant, such a fantastic array of different acts including acrobatics, juggling, clowning, dancing, puppets and loads of bizarre and wonderful interactive performances. I absolutely loved it and I took myself on courses to learn more, and before too long I was working with a local street theatre company and going off on tour with them. By the end of 2004, I'd founded my own company, Curious Cargo, and I've been working in street theatre ever since. I've a range of different street theatre acts that include comedy characters and puppet characters as well. All of my acts are walkabout, which means that they can roam in and out of crowds and stop and interact with people, and some of them have got static sequences as well. My acts are funny, quirky and very interactive. Over the years, I've been really lucky to work with a bunch of brilliantly creative, funny co-performers, and you'll see some of them in the photos that follow. We've performed my acts all over the UK and overseas. We perform at community gatherings, we perform at big town and city events, at festivals, music festivals and big arts festivals as well. So a bit more about my street theatre acts. The Luggage Porters, I'll tell you a bit more about them in a minute. The Lollipop Patrol are two very over-enthusiastic lollipop ladies who reckon they're the 64th emergency service. They get up to all sorts of antics while they're transporting people around and are a veritable flurry of fluoro. In the lead up to Christmas, they've got their festive costume on and they help people navigate their way through the Christmas shopping crowds and give them a giggle on the way. They tell them dreadful jokes. The Temperance Society are terribly uptight Victorians. They're extremely sober, sombre and stern and disapprove of anything that might constitute fun or frivolity. Their aim is to be the guardians of our morals and to keep us on the straight and narrow, which quite frankly they've got their work cut out for them, especially when they're performing at festivals. My sprite puppets. There's two different sets of walkabout puppets for the sprites. The first are the meadow sprites and they come out in the spring and summer. They create all the flowers, plants, foliage and occasionally they'll make themselves visible to the human world. Particularly when they're looking for a compost bin, when they fancy a tasty little snack or they're looking for somewhere to bed down for the winter. And the winter sprites, they're reborn from the ice and snow each year. They're really busy in the winter months as they create all the sparkling hoarfrost and they sculpt all the snowflakes and basically make all the bright, white, cold, fluffy stuff that we see. At least that's what they say they do. Sometimes they too will fly into our human world and they pass the time with stories and mischief. I've two flower lady puppets. The first is Busy Lizzie and she's adorned in spring and summer flowers and is as balmy as the day is long. She's 1100 years old and is journeying on through the garden of life. She likes nothing better than to stop a while and share her wise words and wild flowers. Or maybe it's the other way round, wild words and wise flowers. Her sister is Winter Rose and she's festooned in evergreens, pine, ivy, holly and mistletoe. She's been collecting flowers and foliage from the woods to make her festive garlands and loves to share tales of ancient customs and winter festivities of days gone by. Busy Lizzie and Winter Rose both have soundscapes of chirruping birds and festive bells, and they have a smellscape that goes with them too. It sounds a bit odd, but it's true. They smell of flowers and of herbs and of spices and all sorts of festive aromas. So I've just got one final act to tell you about. Here it is. The Lost Luggage Porters was the first act I made as Curious Cargo with the help from an Arts Council grant. Myself, Peppy Hills, Julian Waite and Rick Taylor all perform as porters, and different combinations of us have performed at lots of festivals and events over the years. I originally devised the act with Peppy and Peter Can, who was our director. The Arts Council grant paid for our rehearsal time and for me to source and make the costumes and props for the act. I dreamt up an act of 2 railway porters with their pile of lost luggage, and inside the luggage were secrets and different worlds waiting to be revealed. Because they had a trolley, it meant they could be very mobile, which was perfect for a strolling piece. And not only was their stack of luggage made up of lost items, but they themselves were lost as well, and were trying to find their way back to the railway station. I keep sketchbooks for all of my projects, and I did lots of research on the porters from the past and stuck these in my sketchbooks along with my ideas and notes. I bought lots of old suitcases, all different shapes and sizes, and began to imagine what might be inside them and what the porters might be like. I decided that the porters had stepped out of a black and white movie from the early 1900s. So the porters would be black and white and grey themselves, but once they opened their suitcases, colour and stories would emerge. Because they were from the era of black and white silent films, we decided they wouldn't use spoken language and instead would communicate through mime, facial expression and body language. The 2 characters developed into a high-status porter who was very self-important, and a low-status porter who had to push the trolley and do all the hard work. I researched the famous comedy duos from old black and white films, like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, Laurel and Hardy, and I studied their look and style. I created our costumes and makeup so that my 2 porters had a strong monochrome visual, which would make them really stand out in our everyday colourful world. Our makeup had a base layer of white and then grey and black applied into all the shadow areas. We stuck on fake moustaches and sideburns with Mastic's theatrical glue. I searched second-hand shops and vintage markets for black and white costume items and spray-painted old military hats black, dyed lab coats grey and made labels and badges for the porters. Finally, with some props for our pockets, the look was complete. Next, I borrowed a sack trolley and we did a photo shoot on my driveway with my photographer friend Sharon Tate. We played around with stacking the suitcases, carrying them, seeing what sorts of shapes we could create with our bodies and props. Sharon transformed these photos into black and white images that we used to market the act and get future bookings. I commissioned a designer engineer friend, Paul, to make the actual trolley that we'd use in the act. He built a wonderful, versatile trolley that breaks down into 2 pieces for when it's been transported, which is really important as I needed to fit all the props and costumes into the boot and back seat of my car for when we were travelling to gigs. I painted the suitcases and bags so that they fitted with the monochrome theme and sourced old-style luggage labels to paste onto the cases to decorate them. Meanwhile, in the rehearsal studio, we were coming up with lots of ideas for the act. We decided that the porters were searching for the railway station but could never find it, and that there would be a soundtrack of steam train noises that accompanied them as they walked around. I bought a portable amplifier, a PA, and found an old suitcase it would fit into, and that became the bottom case of our stack. Over time, I've upgraded the technology and now have a more powerful and lighter PA system in the bottom case. Because the porters were lost, we gave them an old-looking map and used that to interact with members of the public, encouraging them to show us where we were and in what direction we should go. We'd do this without using words, and people understood and they tried to help us. We developed up some static sequences for when we opened up the suitcases. For one of the sequences, we hear the sound of crashing waves coming from inside a case. And then when we open it up, we discover that the sea is in there. I did a mock-up and then I built the actual case so that there were lengths of fabric to unroll which would give to audience members to hold and then wave to bring the sea to life. We then devised a routine which involved swimming, fishing, catching an old boot, the low-status porter struggling in the waves, a synchronised swimming routine, fish falling out of an umbrella and a singing in the rain dance routine. In another sequence we hear a heartbeat in one of the suitcases and find that there is a famous female celebrity inside the case. Both porters are completely smitten with her. I made the puppet for this sequence. I worked out the dimensions, sculpted the head and torso from clay, made a plaster cast from the clay sculpt, scraped the clay out and then poured latex into the plaster mould.
I fixed the latex head onto a rod and attached it onto the body so the head could still swivel and rotate. I painted and then costumed the puppet. Peppy choreographed a tango dance routine for us, which turns into a fight over the puppet. Neither of the porters win, and the puppet ends up shut back in the suitcase in the end. In January 2018, we were invited to take the Lost Luggage porters out to Dubai for their International Shopping Festival. The client didn't have the budget to freight the trolley and our usual setup, so we agreed to take a scaled-down version of the act. Without the trolley, I needed to work out a new way for the low-status porter to transport all the luggage and still look weighed down by it. My co-performer Rick and I played around with different ideas and came up with a mock-up where the porter carried a lot of the luggage on his back, which was supported by hidden straps inside the porter's coat, and more luggage on his shoulders and in his hands. We knew that we could put 4 suitcases in the aircraft hold, so figured out what of our existing props, costume and makeup would fit in these, and what extra I'd need to buy or make. We sussed the logistics and I sprayed and decorated the new cases and made the new props that we needed. When we packed the props, costume and makeup, we made sure that things packed inside each other really neatly and not an inch of space was wasted. In Dubai, we performed in a shopping mall. The act went down really well and we had a great time. Everybody wanted a photo with us. The porters spent a lot of time acting very puzzled by the modern-day metropolis they found themselves in and thoroughly startled by people's mobile phones and modern contraptions that they were using. We had a PA in a case that the high-status porter carried, so our soundscape travelled with us, filling the mall with the sound of steam trains. I'd made some luggage tags so we could put them on people and on their bags and belongings as if they were our left luggage as well. And the festival made their own branded tags too, so we had great fun adorning people with these. The porter spent a fair bit of time palming off their suitcases on unsuspecting members of the audience, putting them in their prams, in their shopping trolleys, or actually just persuading them to carry them. We took 2 extra porter's hats to put on people. These were really popular, and lots of people wanted to become a porter and wear one of the hats. Oh, and the porters were utterly delighted when they spotted people with their own modern-day suitcases too, although they were a bit puzzled by wheels underneath a suitcase. Wherever they're performing in the world, on their travels, the Lost Luggage porters are always making new friends. We have such fun interacting with people and improvising with all the strange and wonderful things that they have and that we find in this puzzling new modern-day world. It's brilliant being a Lost Luggage porter. I hope they never do find the railway station.